Belarusian partisans destroyed a Russian AWACS, a radar plane. Incredibly expensive plane. Ukrainians have struck targets deep inside Russia with their drones. Even air traffic over St Petersburg prohibited landings and takeoffs because they discovered an unidentified aircraft near St Petersburg. Ukraine is at it again. But most important news, of course, comes from Bakhmut. Let's zoom into it. Yesterday we found out that reinforcements of the armed forces of Ukraine have been deployed to Bakhmut. The decision is strategic. This info comes from the Deputy Minister of the Defense of Ukraine. I mean, look at this map. According to this map, the gap to leave Bakhmut for the Ukrainian forces is only 4 kilometers wide. Russia controls this entire gap with artillery, so there is no safe place near Bakhmut. But Ukraine still deployed more reinforcements. If I would look at this map and I would be the commander of the armed forces, I'd make the decision to pull out now. There is a very real danger here that Ukrainian forces might get surrounded fully in Bakhmut. Russia went all in on Bakhmut, and now Ukraine is going all in on Bakhmut, deploying their reserves. And the fact that Ukraine deployed their reserves means that their preparations for the future counterattack have been interrupted. These reserves are necessary for the formation of this counterattack force, but now they're in Bakhmut. That is Russia's goal. They don't want that counterattack, and by attacking Bakhmut so heavily, they force Ukraine to send reinforcements or give up land. This soldier just found out about his deployment yesterday. He got his orders. He said he's glad that he ate the day before. In the infantry of the Ukrainian armed forces, nobody wants to be deployed to Bakhmut. It's the place everybody wants to avoid. It's the worst place. It's the place people are afraid of. It is the Stalingrad of Ukraine. This photo comes from a soldier in Bakhmut who was saved by his gun strap. Somebody really likes him up there. This looks like a Hollywood movie. Things like that don't stop bullets. Bibles don't stop bullets. Phones don't stop bullets. But this gun strap did. Just to illustrate the worsening of the situation for the armed forces of Ukraine near Bakhmut, this is the map beginning of February, 2nd of February, and we go forward. We can see Russia is not able to attack Bakhmut head-on, which they have been doing for 6 months, and they failed and lost like 20,000 men doing that. Now they have a new strategy when Gerasimov took over the salients north and south, and let's see how it progresses. Unfortunately, it does. We can see from north of Bakhmut they have a lot of success, the price of which is of course deadly. They're losing an incredible amount of men and armor. I'll say it one more time, I would pull out of Bakhmut right now. This is the moment. Ukraine was incredibly aggressive with drone attacks last night, deep inside Russian territory. We start with the first one, which happened in Yeisk. Look, this is Mariupol, and this here is Yeisk. This is the military airport right here. And in 22, in October, when the Russian fighter jet crashed into one of the apartment buildings in Yeisk, there was about 10 Su-34s stationed in Yeisk. We're not yet sure what Ukraine strike, but it's a military airfield. There's plenty of targets. And the fact that Russian air defense could not bring down these drones is sad and not surprising to me anymore. But wait, that's not it. It's like a Topshop commercial. But wait, there's more. This is Yeisk. Let's zoom out. And we go about 400 kilometers south. City of Tuapse. I don't know how to say Tuapse. And it's a Russian city, of course, very far from the front, about 500 kilometers from the front. And there was an attack here. Ukrainian drone attack here. What the hell? There is a huge Rosneft oil depot here, and 2 Ukrainian drones, 2 a.m. yesterday, striked that oil depot. We can already see here from this map there's oil facilities and depots. Whichever of these you strike, it does a lot of damage. Oil depots are incredibly difficult to put out. The fires are difficult to put out. Also, most of Russian oil depots function with Western chips and Western technology and even software. They still work, but if they break, you cannot repair them due to the sanctions, because this makes these attacks even more deadly. And the fact that they are 500 kilometers from the front. But wait, that's not it. Now we go to, drumroll, Moscow. Yes, not far from Moscow, in the village of Kubostova, a drone fell next to an object owned by Gazprom. Now this attack failed, or the drone fell down or lost connection, whatever happened to it, there was a potential attack. This means Ukraine has no issues with striking targets next to Moscow and deep inside Russian territory. They have the capabilities to do so, and they are doing so effectively. Pulkovo airfield in St Petersburg stopped accepting aircraft temporarily. Earlier, Russian fighter jets scrambled due to an unknown object in the air. St. Petersburg is about, 200 kilometers from the Estonian border? If Ukraine sent something there, then I am in awe of their capabilities. My friends, Rasputitsa is here. Rasputitsa, the season of mud, rain, wetness, the decaying of roads, fields are impossible to traverse, forests are turned into swamplands. In this video we see what Rasputitsa means for infantry, endless mud. Now this doesn't mean there won't be cold weathers anymore. There will be days and nights with -degrees in Ukraine, but most of the time it will be +degrees now, which means there's no ice, water everywhere. All the frozen ground also just turn into mud and water. Rasputitsa is a good and a bad thing for both sides. It's a very bad thing for attackers. Whichever side is trying to make an armored assault, it's a horrible thing because armor will get bogged down. Remember videos from the first 3 months of war when Russian armor was just sinking in Ukrainian fields, because it was Rasputitsa back then. They lost a lot of armor in Ukrainian fields. Now the time is here again, but it's a bad thing for Ukraine because that means they cannot initiate any big offensive for 1 to 2 months at least, because it will be so muddy they cannot use armor effectively. This postpones Ukrainian great counter-offensive after 2 months, I think. My prediction is it would come in May perhaps. It's simply not possible due to mud. President Zelensky was asked at a press conference what was the most horrific day in this war, and I want to watch his answer with you guys.
Чи можете згадати ваш особистий, найбільш страшний день і найбільш страшну ніч повномасштабної війни?
Напевно, Буча. Напевно, те, що я побачив. Момент, коли ми деокупували, було дуже страшно. За те, що таке, що ми побачили реально, що дьявол, він не десь там, він на землі. Напевно, це.
I would say the better answer comes from Zelensky's eyes. We can see the sorrow and sadness that comes from the suffering of the Ukrainian people and Bucha. Let's be there for Ukraine. We, the people from the Western countries, have the possibility to help. You can do that by staying aware of this war, staying aware and staying educated. There even are people in Estonia who say, oh, I'm apolitical, or I don't care about this war, I don't follow it. In my eyes, this is pure stupidity. It is blindness by choice, and it helps the Russian war crimes in Ukraine. So choose to be aware. That is one of the greatest things you can do. Now, my friends, the time is here to go to your favorite guy in Bakhmut, your favorite soldier in Bakhmut, Giyanin. I like him, I like his analysis because he's a soldier, but he's very well educated in history and in the bigger political picture. I like to listen to what he has to say, and the comments say that you enjoy also.
Вітання, Україна, 27 лютого. Фортеця Бахмут перебуває під українським прапором. Однак ситуація складна, тяжка. Так, кажучи, кожного випуску про неї я не пам'ятаю дня, щоб я мог сказати, що вона там є простою. Просто там ніколи не було, тому що це Бахмут. По ситуації, сама складна ситуація північного напрямку, південно-східна, там з району до Бахмутки. Але там козаки, славетна 93-я, тримає позиції. Окрема подяка першому МСБ, це наші вчителя із 93-ки. Завдячуючи їм, у нас багато піхотинців навчились тих навиків, які дозволили.
So if reinforcements are sent into Bakhmut, whichever troops are sent into Bakhmut, they will learn from troops who have already been there and fighting there for months, in some cases 1 year. When I went to Ukraine, we had to go back with a train, of course, because there's no planes flying to Poland. And there was a soldier in the train. We were smoking and drinking and talking to him, and he said that he just got out of Bakhmut and he had been there for 11 months. And unfortunately, there was no rotation out for him. He got out for a few days. Soldiers who have been fighting in Bakhmut, they have a lot of experience, and you cannot learn this stuff in the training centers, training fields. This stuff you learn on the battlefield from the old timers there. So what they will teach will directly keep soldiers alive.
В тих тяжких боях чомусь навчитися, да, вижити. Дуже багато підрозділів там Національної гвардії, Збройних сил, підрозділів Сил територіальної оборони, операторів ударних розвідувальників, дронів, там Птахи Мадяра, інші підрозділи, які в структурі знаходяться, артилерія, міномети, танкісти. Цим козакам подяка за оборону Бахмута. Завдяки вам, а особливо мужній піхоті, Бахмут тримається. Що стосовно Бахмута і Збройних сил, то це єдине в країні, яке чітко працює в дуже на тяжких умовах, але це єдиний державний механізм, який уособлює в собі нашу державність. До чого я це кажу і говорю про це? Ну, друзі, вчора там мало ще, зараз маємо час, то подивилися випуск Михайла Ткача. Ви знаєте, плювати хочеться від того, що відбувається в Києві. Якесь чмо, ашхердія, шмердія, посланник кацапського бізнесу, прибігло в Київ, уже вони тьорки труть. Як ви знаєте, у нас заарештований в основному весь російський бізнес. Ну, що таке арештований? Сьогодні арештований, завтра не арештований. І ці всі гонці прибігли і вже договарюються. І вони вже там продвинулись в переговорах, судя по тому, що цілий заступник генерального прокурора в ресторані із цими чортами, третьорки, і причому не особливо там ховаючись чи стісняючись, це заступник генпрокурора, який відповідає по напрямку з арештованими активами Мордора. Друзі, ну я не знаю, там сотні, це мільярди доларів. Уже мали бути вони ці активи давно передані на користь держави, відчужені, продані на аукціонах. І Збройні сили вже отримали на отакі автомати, кулемети, міни, снаряди. І ми б не сиділи там в окопах, не ловили міни до снаряди і не одним відповідали пострілом на 30 їхніх, а вже б давно їх вибили там до коліна. Не такі вони вояки, як кажеться. Але ж маємо те, що маємо. Слуги народу до цього чорта в прем'єр-палас їздять, це народні депутати. Вдумайте, які вони народні депутати? Фунти, Бігають, труть, і це відкрито. Це такий плювок в обличчя. Я не знаю, як і все це має хтось проковтнути. Є, врешті-решт, ж правоохоронні органи, якщо вони є. Ну, там із них тільки може щось зробити САП і НАБУ, і Вищий антикорупційний суд. І інші органи, це вони здеградовані, прогнивші там в корупції, пов'язші, це на них надії мало. Але на ці органи є надія, що вони ситуацію вирівняють. І західні партнери теж бачать, і це ж не тільки Ткач, це весь світ бачить, що йде пилорама, дільошка на крові. І плювати їм на тих, хто сидить, і на нас, на всіх, хто ми в окопах, на фронті. Вони війни не бачили і не бачитимуть.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to listen to it because he's being aggressive towards the Western countries and their approach, but he's right. Most of the people haven't seen war, they haven't been in trenches like he has, so he's right, he's speaking the truth. It's just difficult to listen to it because it goes against me also. But still, I agree with him.
Вони в кабінетах повтікали, тепер поверталися і далі пиляють. Але, друзі, така ситуація, і у нас має бути громадянське суспільство для того, щоб таких мерзот і зрадників виявляти, передавати це огласки, передавати інформацію в відповідні органи, журналістам, від яких більше толку, ніж від правоохоронних органів. За це замовчувати не можна. Тому що ЗСУ поки на зовнішньому фронті працює.
Yeah, in Ukraine there's a huge problem with corruption. Most of the government departments and ministries have still big percentage of corruption in them, and Zelensky has formed a higher anti-corruption fighting force. I don't know how it's called, but it's above other ministries, and they're very aggressive. They're arresting very high-ranking officials if they have any suspicions of corruption. They're trying to break corruption with force, but what it needs is, like Kiyanin said, civil society, people. If people notice, because people are the first to notice, not the government officials, people notice some corruption going on, they can put a red flag onto it, they can leak it to journalism, they can take things into their own hands by beating out this corruption. It's about the people, not what the government does. And Ukraine has this change in people, but it's still, there's a lot to be done, and the mindset of the people has changed, but there's still more room to go.
То в тилу у нас там не все так, як хотілося. Тож, якщо коротко, Бахмут неймовірними зусиллями стоїть і тримається. Бахмут – це Україна. Тут все зрозуміло і просто. За спиною хай громадянське суспільство дивиться і робить, не пише в інтернеті. От вернеться ЗСУ і за нас все порішають. Підривайте свої жопи і що-небудь робіть. Пишіть.
He calls up the Ukrainian people, regular people, to talk about when they see crap happening, when they see corruption happening, when they see Russian businessmen getting away with something in Ukraine, for example. This was the situation. So it's about the people. He knows it. He calls up the people. I agree with him. It's a good message. It's also for Western countries. In Estonia, we have actually elections right now, parliamentary elections. And there are some Estonians who are apolitical. I mean, the freedom to vote and the possibility to vote is a gift from heavens, honestly. Democracy is quite rare in the world. And some people take it as granted as like, I don't want to vote. I mean, people have died by tens of thousands for the right for someone to vote in Estonia at least. And there are some people who are not going to vote. It gets my blood boiling. It gets me angry.
В будь-який законний спосіб виявляйте цю мерзоту, їх збивайте з посад. Туди мають стати патріоти. Іначе діла не буде. Написати в інтернеті, робота закінчилася. Я думаю, з цим теж зрозуміло. Бахмут – це Україна. Україна – сама сильна держава в світі, була і буде європейською. Слава нації, до смерті ворогам.
Now we go to Belarus, where Russia lost one of their most expensive assets in their air force. On February 26th, a Russian A-50 AWACS aircraft was damaged at Minsk military airfield. Belarusian sources mentioned the use of 2 UAVs, which were controlled from the territory of Belarus. The operators are reported to be safe and outside the country by now. It is claimed that the A-50 has received serious damage and will not fly anywhere. Front and central part of the aircraft, the avionics and radar antenna were damaged. These are the most important parts of this very specific plane. It's a radar plane. The loss of this plane, the A-50 aircraft, is the greatest single loss of Russian capabilities going back to the sinking of Moskva, the cruiser ship. According to Russian sources, the price of this plane is close to 350 million United States dollars. It would make it one of the most, if not the most expensive Russian plane. The Soviet Union built about 15 of them, and Russia was able to maintain about 5 or 6 of them actively in the Air Force that were supposed to be working, because these planes are impossible to produce. Even if Russia was not under sanctions, they could not produce these planes. They are left from the Soviet times. These planes are used to coordinate missile attack against Ukrainian targets. These are a vital link to these missile attacks. Take out these planes, Russia cannot produce anymore. They cannot repair them because there's no capabilities, there's no way. These are rough numbers, but Russia is supposed to have about 2 to 3 working A-50s left in the country. That's it. That's all they have. Cannot make any more. That's what they have. Russia has just one tank factory. It's a huge tank factory, which can produce about 20 tanks per month. The demand for tanks is now outstripping the production of tanks by a factor of 10. So for every 1 tank they produce, they lose 10. In the 1940s, the Soviet Union was able to produce about 1,000 tanks per month. Today, Russia can produce just 20. In various towns in Crimea, Ukrainian activists and partisans repaint the Russian Z letters by making an hourglass out of them with Ukrainian flag colors. Ukraine has started an info op that's goal is to prepare for the liberation of the southern Ukraine and Crimea. The officials talk about the inevitability of liberating Crimea. Zelensky has put in motion a plan of action of integrating Crimea back into the Ukrainian governing system. All this is part of a big information war. To feed the information to the southern Ukrainian people and Crimean people, are they Russian or Ukrainian, that Ukraine is coming and it would be inevitable that Ukraine will liberate and take their land back. These plans, these operations sow fear into the Russian population of Crimea, who now will want to close their businesses and leave Crimea, undoing about a decade's work of Putin, who subsidized Russian businesses in Crimea and lured Russians to live in Crimea, to Russianize Crimea. This has all been undone by now. Serbia has sold about 3,500 Grad rockets to Ukraine. Serbia, traditionally a very Russian ally, now has been found out to be selling weapons to Ukraine. The rockets were delivered to Ukraine. More interestingly, these rockets are not standard with a range of 20 kilometers. These have a range of 40 kilometers. The rockets can be identified by a very specific rocket motor, which is unlike any other Grad rockets. In Chisinau, Moldova, there are riots going on. They are organized by a pro-Russian party called SHOR. They are anti-government riots. Bear in mind, the new government which recently was put in place is very pro-Western. The crowd, which was brought in by buses made out of mostly Russians in Moldova, is trying to get to the government, but they're blocked by riot police. Apparently, Kremlin does not leave the idea of trying to stage a coup in Moldova or take over the country. In this video, a reporter asked from a protester, what is he about, what are they doing? And the protester asks, I don't know, I'm not from here, I'm from Russia. So there are not only Russian-speaking people in Moldova, there are actually people from Russia brought into this protest. Russia plays with the Russian minority in Moldova and adds their own population to it. That's what they do with the neighboring countries. They have been doing this in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland for decades. This is how the Eastern European countries know what Russia is about, because we live with this for 30 years already. The average lifespan of a Russian soldier in Ukraine has been estimated to 60 days, 2 months only. Russian soldiers abandoned in Ukraine on average disappear in about 60 days. This comes from Novaya Gazeta Europe, and they analyzed about 10,000 social media posts about deceased soldiers. This is a very sad statistic, and it reflects the weakness of the Russian armed forces. Now, my friends, the time is here to thank the Patreons. These 5 people are tier 10 and above, and I'll be butchering their names. Terri 2V Sanders 2, Merita Knapp, Colin Moyer, Paul McManus, Mikkel Sharper. Thank you, my friends. If you like my channel, subscribe to it and become a Patreon. Links in the description below. And until my next video, as always, Slava Ukraini.